Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Culturally Responsive Built Environments. Today we are going to discuss about understanding rock shelters. Look at this map from the Google Earth. So what do you see from here? So people can identify there are some valleys here. It's a little mountainous region and there's some kind of water patches, and it's all seems like a little bit of cliff. Little bit closer, you can see that yes, it's a little bit of cliff type of area. It's all mountainous area. Let's see further. This is what we see. Much closer is Pitalkhora caves near Aurangabad, and these are all one of the ancient caves located in Satmala range of Western Ghats of Maharashtra. This lecture is basically developed based on the works of Prabhakar Nandagopal, who is a superintending engineer, archaeologist, ASI, and also M.N. Deshpande's work and some of the archival's work which is compiled together. And most of the images have been procured from one of my students, Shivi Joshi, and this is actually the work of Prabhakar Nandagopal's work, and where he was working on the Archaeological Survey of India. So when you talk about these cave dwellings, they are not isolated. Even in the ancient times, the trade routes do exist. Like there are some ancient ports, and how people actually do establish their network and the trade routes through the ancient ports. It's not only within the Indian subcontinent, there are also some evidences that people have traveled to the other parts of the world. And of course, if you look at the Silk Route map, or if you even look at some of the similarities in certain evidences, what they have found in the archaeological sites, they could even find far from Egypt and Greece. So obviously this tells us that the ancient man was moving around and obviously establishing their centers. Now here you can see that the caves, the Pitalkhora almost is here, whereas from Aurangabad, the Ellora and Ajanta. So there are a group of cave dwellings located in this part of the region, and up above, if you see the Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, and so that is how these are some of it gives you an idea of how these cave settlements have scattered around and how they are also connected. Now, in the Pitalkhora, they refers back to one of the ancient Buddhist site. In the excavation process, they have found about 13 rock cut cave monuments, which date back to almost from 250 pre-250 BC to the almost nearly to the 2nd and 3rd century BC. So this is one of the important article which I have found. Some have authors or are known, but I could see the work of M.N. Deshpande's work and other archaeologists' work mentioned within that. But in the survey, they've actually mapped down what are the variety of caves, and they actually looked at the kind of evidences and how they are formed. In fact, they, based on the evidences, the way they have been constructed, the way they have been organized, it actually reveals a lot of understanding towards the architectural development. Like, for instance, they classified the K1, 1B, and 5A, they're all considered in the phase 1, and phase 2, which are about 250 BC, whereas 2 and 3, they're all from phase 2, whereas from 250 to 200 BC, the cave number 4, that is about, and then phase from 200 to 180 BC, then again you have the cave number 7. And phase 5 is 180 to 160 BC, which is about 2nd and 6. So like that, the much recent is about 8, 9, 13. So that is how they have phased it out based on the kind of constructions, the architectural quality embedded within it, and the kind of paintings which they have analyzed, what age it could have been. And for instance, if you look at how it is showing the development of architecture, it dates back about 450 years. And if you look at the cave 1, they are much more as a starting point, and it is not in a very rigid forms, but they are, the corridor system is very narrow, and the lighting and ventilation is hardly there is any lighting, and the roof height is little less. So all these things is a kind of, as I said, in the trial and error process. But if you look at the other forms of from here, if you take further, you can see the development, and similarly they started improving the height of the caves. They started organizing in a cells format, in a organized cells format. And here one can also notice some of viharas. In Buddhist architecture, we call about viharas, which is a kind of a place for a kind of pleasure and a kind of gathering. We also notice some Chaicha Gruha. Chaicha Griha, you can notice in cave number 10, and even in cave number 3, and even in the cave number 12. This is one of the largest Chaicha Gruha in this particular shelters, and you can see the cave number 12 was actually done without pillars. And so this is where you can see a kind of stupa, and here in 11 you can see 3 stupas here, and these are all reflecting, they're all could be also having some comparisons with what you find in today's Bihar, what you find, and this one you can find what you find in today's some of the ancient monuments in Bihar, and as well as in the follow-up sites of Ajanta. And little further in cave number 3, it is one of the largest, and you have this colonnade and the stupa. In this, they also found some kind of rock paintings, which are of little in the early stage of paintings, where the ornamentation was very less. And similarly, you can see here, it is in cave number 5, you can see a cell which is embedded within a cell, and that is how, and this 8 is again, it is neither a Chaicha, neither a Vihara, so but Fir M.N. Deshpande calls it, refers it to a Vihara. And the way, the overall form one can notice is from a very organic layouts to the much more rigid and a plan development. Here in the plan 8, they also, most of the time, this is a kind little bit of water logging and area, and they also have made a trench to take away the excess water. And but if you look at it, the way these caves are developed in, because we are talking about nearly some 300 to 3 to 4 centuries time, and they're actually evolving by its the way the spaces are organized, the way, and if you see the cave number 9, you can see more cells have been incorporated, which means which indicates that more people are, there was a need to accommodate more set of, either it could be a meditation component or it could be a gathering component. So that is actually showing a kind of need also. And according to the paleographical grounds, we find 5 phases of inscriptional records of Pitalkhora. In fact, the earlier colonials who actually excavated these particular caves, they started with about 2 inscriptions, and later M.N. Deshpande have added about 3 to 4 inscriptions in it, and following upon some other experts also have added. So they're also found, because they're all written in kind of Pali language, and you can see on these pillars which they found in the 3rd cave, you can see a small text here, right? And this actually, the text also sometimes gives you a good information of a particular date, or at least a particular period which it was constructed or which this particular pillar was donated. Like here, the text says the pillar is donation of Mitradeva of the Gadika family, a resident of Patithana, which is of Pratisthana, modern Paitan. So you can see that is now translated here, and like that they have found these particular monumental structures have been donated by certain families or certain groups. Now in phase 1 they found where the Mitadeva and Sangakasa, which refers to 250 to 230 BC, whereas from the phase 2 they find 250 to 200, which Rajavajesha family, and in 200 to 180 they say about Denu Kakataka and then this 180 Nan and Kanhadasa, and the much more recent is about 170 to 150 Ave Selena. So here a small incarnation also talks about, gives a lot of information of who those settlers are and how they have built it and what is the meanings embedded within it. And that is where a lot of historical evidence also correlate with what you find in Ajanta, what you find in Bihar, and what you find in Nepal, and how you actually correlate with the same time and that's where you can see how the Buddhism have spread up from which part to which part. So these are the important evidences. Now similarly, this is again a pillar. You can see some kind of text which is actually a donation of the sons of Sagaka. But now if you look at the panoramic view of this, it actually say this is 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and then 9. So you can see the way the elevation of the cave setting and the way the caves are organized. Like if you say this is the cave number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and look at these small openings, and which is a little larger one. And similarly, in some of the caves you also find certain figures, certain symbols of elephants and bulls, horse, lion. They also represent some kind of guardians in 4 directions. So elephant we normally refer with the east, and the bull which is referred to the west, and here in horse you refer to the south, and in north we have the Simha, the lion. So there are symbolic characters how they use, and apart from this there are some deers, there are some other animals or certain any particular flowers or any other thing. But then these symbols are not only just talking about only these guardians. Some of these they are reflecting to the Buddha's life and some of the stories of Buddha, how he encountered and so they reflect certain incidences as well. In the Mahayana phase of Buddhism, Pitalgora is discernible only in the form of painted Buddha figures. So what you can see in the cave 3, they also find some kind of paintings, the rock paintings, which are referring to the Mahayana phase. Mahayana phase is one of the important phase in the Buddhism, and also refer with the kind of sect, Mahayana sect. It's almost in the present context probably about 53% or more than 50% do compromise of this Mahayana sect. And here if you observe the kind of hairstyle, and also they are less ornamented, whereas if you see in Ajanta, you see more of ornamentation and much more of a celebration paintings where a group of, so they all depicts a kind of history and a kind of narratives of a particular story or a particular event in Ajanta, whereas here it is much more in the early forms of these paintings, so where you don't find of much of ornamentation. So that way it actually tells that how even the paintings have started evolved in time. Now, till now I have just talked about a little bit about the historical aspects of it, and we talked about how an architectural understanding could be developed, the way by looking at the excavated caves, how their forms, how their characters reflect the development of architecture and also the need for such kind of architecture. And it also talks about how the various art forms have been used for symbolizing certain religious aspect of it. But now, when this was to be, why all this history, how does it make a difference of an historian subject and how it will be useful for an architectural subject? And that is where when we are involved in the conservation projects, so how one can look at it, especially these are some of the rich evidences of our culture and our history, our past, and how one can actually protect these things. So in order to protect, it is not only the history which can help you better, it is also we have to look from a different lens. Here I am projecting some kind of geological understanding what the Prabhakar's group have done with GSI, the Geological Survey of India. And before that, I would like to give some kind of basics of how the rock formations and how they evolved into these kind of cave dwellings. In Pitalgora, it is often referred as there is a thick layer of tacholitic basalt at the lower proximity of the hill, which have restricted the scope of excavation as per the projected plans. The basalt actually comes from the kind of igneous rocks when the lava blows up, and here there are different kinds of terminology which they use, like for instance which is also referred in Hawaiian meaning, or this is one of the basic types of lava. It is a basaltic lava which is having a very rough and rubbly surface. So this is how, through which after it cools down, this is how the clinker is extracted. Whereas there is another term you should be learning about, pahoi. Pahoi from Hawaiian, which is smooth, unbroken lava, is a basaltic lava again, but it's a kind of, it's flowing like a liquid, it's just a liquid, but in the earlier stage it's like in a very rubbly surface. Whereas what happens when these things get cooled down? Once, if you see, the structural forms are able to, you can see the structural forms, you see, here, yeah, and here. So, and some of the cavities are formed within it, and you can see, right? And when the lava cools down, when obviously based on the nature of the kind of lava it has flown, and after it cools down, obviously certain structural forms are defined, and the lava is not going all at once. They are actually it is passing down, and again one more layer coming, again one more layer coming. So it is going, it's like you pour a liquid and then it is coming and stopping at some point, and then about another one. So you can see those layers of lava coming up. You can see here when it cooled down how the cooling joints and how it actually defines the kind of structural forms, and that itself becomes a kind of beds. And this tachylitic basalt is not a conducive rock for cave excavation, as its chemical properties react sharply with moisture and disintegrates into pieces. Because the moment it reacts with the moisture, obviously it tends to break down into small pieces. So in Pitalkhora caves, that was one of the difficult part, why they have to go from top to bottom rather than bottom to top. So in that process, they had difficulty of in excavation because it's getting into pieces. So there is always a danger of how you might lose an evidence, how you might break a particular an artifact or any particular important evidence of that time. So they are not able to do in the same way of what they have projected. The other forms you can see is the ropey structure, because due to certain chemical reactions with the kind of atmosphere or with the nature, the way the lava is produced. So it also produces a ropey structure. So see what happens when it cools down, and when it cools down, it obviously makes a kind of similar form. Now, what kind of, I would say, how when it cools down for a long time, how the weathering takes place and how the nature of the rock transforms. So one of the important aspects which we talk about is the periodical weathering, and where it actually breaks up from the top because of the moisture with the wind, or so the weathering process, and so there is always a damage to these particular rocks. And also they call it as bowl beds, and as I said, the lava flows in successive intervals of time, and these bowl beds can be effectively used to construct the time intervals between successive lava flows and Deccan traps. So obviously the Pitalkhora is coming in the Deccan trap, so you can see that different colors, the reddish and green colors within these vertical layers, so they are actually telling you that the kind of time, the successive time of when this lava have flowed, and how it is settled down and when the next one came. So they're all giving some evidences. Now, geological mapping has been done by the GSI, and I mean, to do this survey, it is not an easy task. It is a Herculean task because of being it is not a regular building to study it like with just general tape. It's a meticulous observation, and also certain you have to be very carefully even in touching any object, because it has a very rich heritage character in it. Now you can see in the cave 3 you have the Chaicha Gruha, where you have the kind of stupa here, and you have these square shaped columns, but the square shape is this is very new of that time, and one has mapped they have actually mapped the way these cracks have appeared, the kind of damage, the hazard gradation of cracks, and they have mapped everything in all the caves. So similarly, they divided into quadrants, and they have actually informed everything about the kind of hazard index, where exactly at what level. And you can see in cave 1 and cave 2, I'm just showing a few examples of how the hazard mapping has been done through their observations or through any particular testing process, or so finally, because this data is a very rich data, because before taking off any conservation act, one need to really understand the root causes of the geological aspects of it, or even one need to understand even the historical evidences of it, what phase it was, so how they actually also correlate with it. And based on this, you can see that this is from the ASI Aurangabad's website. You can see the status almost We are talking from 1954, and here we are. In the next photograph I'll be showing 2012 as well, and here the first stage in 1954, the debris were cleared, and the fallen, collapsed parts of rock lying in front were removed and the area leveled up. So basically, just to identify these places and to clear the debris itself will take a long time, and it has to be done very carefully. It is not like a bulldozer coming and taking it out. And improvements to this important but little known group of caves were affected by the construction of steps from hilltop and removal of huge boulders fallen from the ceiling and other debris in the vihara adjoining to main structure. So like that, various steps have been taken up, and they've identified some 2 elephant caryatides, and like that, each stage they are excavating on one side, they're finding new evidences, they're again clearing the debris, and in that process they also developed a kind of steel footbridge just to cross over for the visitors to visit that place. So in order to, in the rainy season, so it will be helpful for them. So like that, here you can see deposit work is awarded to Geological Survey of India towards the cost of geological and geotechnical and geophysical and geo-environment of Pitalkhora caves in the southern India. So this is the time actually where different fields come together to actually come with a holistic purpose, holistic understanding of the rock shelters. Now, I'll show you a good example of what happened later on. Once after they identified some kind of water patches, the water leaking seepages in some places because of a mountain area. So they obviously noted that there is a need for diverting certain water channel. So you can see that these whole water channel, they have built a small culverts so that it will still, because you have to protect those kind of rich evidence of our past. So in that way, some measures, even to make this small effort, one has to really understand the whole site planning aspect of it, the whole topography aspect of it, and the geological aspect of it, and how it could be carefully done. So as an architect, what this whole process tells us is, it is not just what we study from our own discipline, but how we engage ourselves within and collaborate with the other disciplines and make a holistic understanding into it. That is one of the real important purpose of collaboration, and especially it is important, very important in the conservation aspect of it. So, and to conclude this thing in terms of name, how this Pitalkhora, in Khora, it says a kind of valley, gorge, and whereas in Sinclair Levy, it's also used as Brazen Glen, and in some of the texts, they also refer to Pipalkhora, which is about Ficus religiosa, which is referred to Bodhi tree. But M.N. Deshpande is one of the pioneers who actually extensively worked on this particular project, and all. I've given the links of M.N. Deshpande's work and everything, and how, even though how they actually classified the architectural development in the cave and also the artistic development of it into it. So it is very important to understand such important contributions. Thank you very much.